Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is a prep coach. Today's guest is Mark Tomanek. Mark, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you for having me, Quinn. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm excited to chat with you today, Mark. Before we kind of get into all things bodybuilding and coaching in depth, I would like to know, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Sure. So I'll start with probably the most notable who people know, which would probably be Dorian Yates, who I have probably taken the most inspiration from in terms of my training and how I even, scaled back volume, scaled up intensity, and know that they share an inverse relationship. So Dorian's definitely the one that really sticks out in my mind. But Lee Labrada, I mean, his physique is absolutely undeniable, and incredibly. The whole family is incredible, right? And the other one that's not very notable is my dad. He competed when I was born, up until about the late to mid '90s when he retired from that realm. But if it wasn't for him, Tomanek trained. In what I do, the whole entire team and the impact they're able to make would not even be a thing. So he's definitely one of my probably my biggest inspiration for sure.
Love that, man. I'm going to ask you some more questions about your dad here after I ask this next question, which it probably is going to have to do with your dad. But at what age did you start lifting weights, Mark? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
Sure. So I started at 10 years old. And when I started, there was this myth that if you train too early, it stunts your growth, all the craziness that comes along with those myths. But I started at 10 years old for wrestling. I wrestled, from a very young age. I think I started in first grade. Yeah, first grade, we got a flyer in the mail. My dad wrestled and went to states in middle school. And he wrestled a little bit in high school too. So I was like, hey, let's give it a shot, So I went and did that. I trained for a really long time for wrestling, went to college and wrestled in college as well. So my main, the purpose of me getting in the gym, obviously very family business oriented, and was just a part of the upbringing, but also wrestling so I could win and be strong.
Very cool, man. Okay. So talk to us a little bit more, Mark, about your childhood, your upbringing. You already mentioned your dad, but why don't you tell us where you grew up? Talk about other sports that you played outside of just wrestling. Any siblings? Any impactful adults outside of your parents? Coaches, teachers. Just talk to us a little bit about that up to about high school, and then we'll transition from there.
Okay, cool. So I was born in Avon Lake, Ohio. I still reside here today. I actually lived next door to where I grew up until the beginning of this year. So I haven't gone far. Basically, when I was born, my dad started competing in bodybuilding. He actually opened up Competition Bodies Gym, which we own today, in 1986. So when I went to the gym, I remember sitting behind the bar playing with my toys, and my mom would be lifting, my dad was lifting. I remember 3 years old specifically watching my dad compete in a powerlifting competition that took place in my gym. And so my entire life was geared around that gym, being in the gym, being in that environment. And it wasn't always the most kid-friendly environment. So it brought me up in a very blue collar, tough era environment. And I started wrestling at a really young age, trained for that. I grew up alongside my sister, who is a couple years younger than me. I do have a brother who's my dad's son, not my mom's. And he was a couple cities over, but he eventually moved to Avon Lake. His kids went through the school system here, so we eventually became closer with them. As I was going through my wrestling career, my dad being the most notable influence, obviously, in my life and my career path and what I chose to do, not only from like a career standpoint, but athletic standpoint as well. There was a couple other people that really came to mind. I mean, my high school wrestling coaches were great. They were fantastic people. I sought outside help when I was coming up, in wrestling, and I there was just coaches that were hard on me. And what I realized is there was a lot of men in my life that were very hard on me growing up. They were tough, man, tough individuals, just hard as nails. And I really, what that has rubbed off on my coaching, to a certain degree. But I was never given anything in my life. I mean, my parents were great. They were pretty low income. My dad worked at an auto body shop for over 40 years until he, left there. My mom was a study hall monitor at a high school, which doesn't pay well. She only went when we were after we were $30,000 of credit card debt, deep. I started working at 11 years old, my first job. Excuse me. I worked at a bicycle shop, and I just cleaned the bikes for my dad's friend, and that's how I got paid. I remember getting paid $5 an hour under the table, cash. Hope the IRS doesn't find me for that one. But so I grew up that way. They were two very loving parents. I never saw them fight. They had the utmost respect for each other. They were beautiful examples of what a healthy relationship is. So I didn't grow up rough by any means. I simply just grew up strapped for money and had to work for what I wanted. My first pair of new clothes were, that weren't off the clearance rack were the ones that I bought when I was in 10th grade. So yeah, that's kind of the upbringing that I was in, the environment that I was raised in.
Okay, now I'm very curious. How did your dad then get into lifting weights and then, getting into competitive bodybuilding himself? Do you know that story? If so, why don't you share that with us? I'm curious.
Yeah. So, growing up and when he was younger in the 70s and 80s, people were just starting to get trained. Arnold was out, they would have the magazines out and he would look at those. But they really just, him and his couple of friends had a couple of dumbbells at home. And before they would go out, he had a bunch of fancy cars growing up. He had a 60 Corvette, all these different cars. They would take to car shows and they'd go out to clubs back in the 80s, and they'd get a pump on before they would go. And that's how it started. Then he's like, my dad was very entrepreneurial, business oriented. He's a talker and he has the gift of the gab. He can make anybody, light up, get a smile on their face. As hard as he is, he's also very personable. And eventually he saw, a need for a gym in this area. There were no gyms in this area. There was World Gym a couple cities over. That is now out of business. So we're probably one of the oldest gyms in the area, but that was kind of his story there. It was kind of simple,
Now, how many competitions did he do? And did he compete in the AAU, MPC?
It was the MPC. And actually he would compete at Dave Lieberman's show, which he still has now, which is now like the Natural Northern, and also the one in early spring. It's also a naturally drug tested show. So my dad was a natural athlete. I want to say he was in 4 or 5 bodybuilding competitions that I can remember off the top of my head. Again, natural athlete, he stayed within that realm. He knew if he went to the next level, he would have to take drugs, and that was not in his moral compass, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Ohio, over the years has produced a lot of great bodybuilders, and it's in the Midwest. I'm in Iowa, so the Midwest just has a different flavor, right? It's kind of a different breed of cat here in the Midwest, and I know this because I've lived outside of the Midwest, right? And people tell me, they're like, oh, you're from Iowa, and they're like, oh, those are hardworking, good people, right? And I think generally speaking, that's what most people would say about Midwesterners, right? So, anyways, going back to Ohio, like obviously, powerlifting's big in Ohio. There's been some really elite bodybuilders come out of Ohio. Even like John Meadows, that's where he resided and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, just I'll just call it the physical culture in Ohio. Wrestling obviously is huge in Ohio, like it is in Iowa. Talk about just the physical culture in Ohio, and just kind of, is it generally speaking, just no matter kind of where you're at, a little bit tougher culture there? Is that kind of inbred into most of you guys growing up?
Yeah, it is a physical culture. It's not. I don't see it being aggressive in the nature of like violence or emotional instability. I see it as grit. It is, to its core, it is grit oriented, and everyone knows that if you're here, you're going to have to work to make something of yourself, because there's no like, you don't fall by luck. A lot of people out here that I know that I'm friends with just have, their work ethic is second to none. And a lot of friends come to mind, people that want something more out of life. But still, a lot of people here, I don't think, can see bigger visions or further visions of making things bigger than what they could be potentially. It's all about just that hard work mentality, family, providing for the family, making sure that everyone's taken care of. And what else is there to do in Ohio, so to speak, during the wintertime besides lift weights or, be a football player? Or now we have rugby up here, which is becoming bigger, or wrestling, when we're one of the most notable wrestling states in the country, if not the most.
Yeah. I'm sure beer drinking is probably a part of the culture, right?
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're a Browns fan.
Yeah, right. That's kind of what it is, in Iowa. It's like, man, you got wrestling, you got beer drinking, and football season's pretty good too. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot. But anyways, let's I want to touch on wrestling a little bit, Mark, because you said you wrestled in college. Obviously, you get the discipline from wrestling and football and sports. You get the work ethic. But is there anything maybe that some of us haven't thought about in terms of what wrestling specifically taught you as a young person that's maybe overlapped into adulthood and coaching and bodybuilding, kind of where you're at in life right now?
Yeah, it taught me suffering. I think that was the most notable, almost like an adjective that I could give it. It's suffering. It's learning how to endure things that are definitely not in your favor. They're not desired, but that if you withstand the struggle and the suffer, you're going to come out the other side more resilient and more prepared. But I think, between the extensive wrestling practices that where the heat would get turned up in the wrestling room to the 90s, maybe hundreds, and people were literally, falling over, and trying to keep themselves to stand up, or, to push through the next set or whatever it was, or starving to literally make weight, because a lot of people didn't cut weight the most intelligent way, as bodybuilders do in most cases. But to be able to withstand that for long periods of time, be injured, but still press on and continue on to finish the match or finish the practice, or, suck it up a little bit and, continue to push through those bumps and bruises, to make your dreams, come true. That has really overlapped into the bodybuilding realm for me. Has made it, even in life, it's helped me, withstand the struggles that life has thrown at me and the hurdles that I've had to endure to come out the other side where I am now.
Yeah, love that, man. The word suffering. Some people would think that word is a bad word, but I think those who know it's a good word, and it's a word and something, if you can master it or continue to work on suffering, there's so much value in it within life, right? So
Right.
very cool. Now,
there's different.
Go for it.
I was going to say there's different levels to suffering. Everyone has their own perception of suffering too. So, you talk to somebody that has really went through life altering things, or, potentially life threatening things, their idea of suffering, compared to somebody else who's not went through those things, is going to be different, but it's still suffering nonetheless, or struggle nonetheless. It just can be described and displayed in so many different ways.
Right. Okay. Now, what were you when you were in high school, Mark? What was your vision for your life, or what were some of your dreams? What did you want to pursue? What were you thinking about job wise, career wise? And then once you went to college, how did that kind of unfold, if it did in that way?
Sure. Yeah. So for me in high school, I didn't necessarily have a education based mindset. It was all athletic. And I knew if the only way I was going to go to college, because my parents couldn't provide a dime for it, the only way I'd go to college is if I wrestled my way there. And surely I did. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. There were, male figures in my life that had jobs that were stable, like my dad in the auto industry, which is not something I wanted to pursue. My uncle was a nurse, and that was something that was, in demand, well paying. Okay, let's try that. And it was along the lines of science, to some degree. Like I did anatomy and physiology, my chemistries, and all of those were great. I love those. However, you get into some of the other things, and I was like, is this really what I want to do? And as I was coming up in high school, I started to do personal training, not only for my lifting and competition bodies, but also wrestling. So I was teaching people that were either my age, a little bit younger than me, and I really enjoyed that. So as I'm going through my collegiate experience, I realized that this nursing path wasn't for me, probably what I wanted to do exactly. And I shifted my gears towards teaching and education, where I completed my degree in education for grades 7 through 12 in history or social studies, I should say. And I ended up going on to becoming a history, government, economics teacher at my alma mater, Avon Lake High School. Again, staying in my realm, in my small radius, and it was never at the forefront of my mind that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, because it wasn't something that made you money. It was never something that you could make a livable income off of, even though I loved it. My parents were very realistic with me. They were realists to the fullest. And they told me, hey, you need to get something that pays well. You're going to be able to pay this college debt down, because I did all of that by myself and accumulated all that college debt to myself, to my name. And there needed to be something that paid consistently that I could rely on.
Wow, that's cool. Now, how long did you were you a teacher in the public school system for?
I taught for 6 years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my K through 12 licensure in terms of being a PE teacher, and I did that for a couple years when I lived out in Colorado. But I'm curious, what did you have an interest, and do you still have an interest like in the next generation and youth? Because I see a lot, there's a huge turnover rate within teaching, because maybe somebody has the mindset of like, hey, I gotta have a stable job, I gotta okay, whatever, I can stand up in front of people and share some information. But what I found out is that, like, just like any other profession, like if you don't have that passion, at some point there's going to be burnout, and you're probably just going to throw in the towel and walk away, because like, hey, like I just really don't have the passion for kids, or I don't have the passion for whatever it might be. So talk about just like, do you have a passion for youth, or was it just kind of feeling that duty of like, hey, it's a reliable job, I've got the salary, I got to do this until maybe something else comes to fruition?
Yeah, so I think I have a passion for teaching just in general. Like that is at the core. That's the core of my coaching as well, is teaching. And it doesn't really matter the age. I don't think I connect well with younger kids, which is why I chose the high school route. I don't know if I don't have the patience for it, or that's just not my passion, or I'm just not good at it. But for me, teaching high school students, specifically seniors, I could make connections. There was relatability. When I started teaching, I was 23 years old. I wasn't very far off from the 18-year-olds I was teaching. And when I was also in high school and I was, mentoring people, or I was passing on the knowledge that my dad passed on to me, to be a personal trainer or coaching people, or even when I was in college and I went back and I coached or personal trained individuals, it was something that I enjoyed. I didn't make a whole lot of money. I didn't charge a whole lot because I didn't know there was ability to do that. But I just love the ability to pass on information. I think that I got that from my dad though, because my dad's really good at that. Sometimes he can like preach, sort of but he's teaching you in his own way. And I really always took a lot from my dad, and still do today. That's something that I like to be able to pass on to people. Is like, here's my experiences, here's the knowledge that I've accumulated. I can shorten your efforts, or you having to give so much time, which time is money, to learning on your own, where I can pass that on to you.
Mm. So during those 6 years of being a teacher, outside of kind of maybe refining your actual, teaching skills, what did you take away from that experience? What were some positive things that you we're like, man, maybe the teaching thing wasn't for me in terms of the kids and in this setting, but I learned this about, interacting with other human beings, or I learned this about myself. What were some takeaways in the positive sense from teaching?
I think in teaching specifically, I really like making the connections with people, and I can tend to be a little bit of an introvert. Well, a lot of it sometimes, right? So I learned how to make connections with different people, but also relay information and teach and differentiate my instruction, which helped a ton when I'm working with so many different people. And when I was done teaching, it was never that the kids didn't make me happy. It was the administration, the setup, and what the purpose of education became, and what it was no longer, or what I thought it was. And when I transitioned into coaching full time, um, I just found that teaching in general, people, was the most satisfying thing to me.
Yeah. Okay. Now, talk about, are you still there, Mark? You froze up on
Yeah,
me. Okay.
yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. Okay. Gotcha. Now talk to me a little bit about, your, bodybuilding experience in terms of, have you competed before? Talk about that, and then talk about, how you kind of transition then from being a public school teacher into kind of full-time coaching training.
Sure, sure. So I actually started coaching prior to me bodybuilding myself. I started coaching a friend, David. I still talk to him today. We chat in the DMs quite a bit. We go back and forth. Great guy. But I started coaching him based on the notes I studied from my dad's preps. He has folders, and I would go through and just study. And of course, I was on the forums, trying to read as much as possible, trying to learn from guys like John Meadows. Phil Viz was giving information on there. And not all the information from everyone was always correct, or applicable, but it definitely, started pulling me in the right direction in teaching me.
Okay, so
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep, you're good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so I essentially started, coaching first, just my friends. Didn't really charge money for that, and eventually, there were people like, "I would really like to see you compete," and I had an interest because bodybuilding became at the forefront of my interests. Even while teaching and pursuing my education as well. So I did. I had a couple mentors growing up, Mickey Finucane and Jacob Castro. Both of them are no longer with us today, so rest in peace to them. But they were guys that pushed me to compete and pushed me to train hard and educated me on nutrition, for what was available at the time, along with my own studies, on forums and things of that nature. My first competition was in 2014, Julie Palmer, where I competed there in Dayton, Ohio. I won my middleweight class and the novice, and then got my ass beat by RD Caldwell, who's a pro now. Great pro, great poser. He's phenomenal. And overall, I got beat by him. And I coached myself for that, actually. So again, I reverse engineered, a lot of my dad's material. I implemented to a certain degree, not only what I learned from my nutrition in wrestling and how to diet myself down from that, but the notes that I studied there and the things I picked up on the forums. Those were, the primary drivers of my success there, and then through trial and error, you learn more and continue on. It was stuff I could pass on to my athletes too, as I continue to coach. And I only coached probably one or two people a year on stage, in the earlier years. Whereas in 2019, when I was still teaching, that's when I started to pick up athletes that were, very successful. One of them was a girl named Yasmin, who joined up at the end of 2018. She ended up winning her pro card in figure. And then Keely, who's still with me today, coaches with me. She was 1 point away from the pro card at North Americans. So it started this trajectory and this display of, hey, this guy actually might know something. Maybe, we'll see. So It grew from there, and as that year went on, my roster grew exponentially really fast, to the point where I could no longer be a one-man show. And I started to bring on coaches, but I didn't know how to structure business, didn't know how to do taxes. It just, I was again, kid from Avon Lake, with a passion. And I brought on, two individuals who I still work with today, my CEO and my CFO, to build, Tomanek Train to what it is today. But it was all those initial steps of trial and error, not only with myself, but with my own athletes, what little I had, and trying to, again, I think coaching for me really took off because I saw a lot of the practices being unsafe in some way, shape, or form. And I just figured there has to be a better way. Like, there has to be a smarter way to do this. And I started digging into that and then picking up mentors like Austin Stout, who I know you've had on, great guy. Austin Stout taught me a lot about functional health. And then that's when things really took off for me. Not only the successes on stage, but the success of getting people that were in an unhealthy position to a healthy position to either continue on with their life, right, and have kids and do all that fantastic things, or get back on stage, which some of them have chosen to do.
Now, before we dive fully into coaching, I just want to finish up or wrap up kind of your competitive, bodybuilding. So you competed in that one show. Is that the only show that you've done? Do you have any plans of competing in the future, or are you fully just focused on business right now?
So I competed in, oh man, quite a few regional shows. And I mostly stuck to the middleweight division for bodybuilding. When Classic Physique came around, I went into Classic Physique and transferred over there, won multiple classes, and then eventually outgrew my weight cap, which was 175 pounds for Classic Physique A. And I went into light heavyweight bodybuilding. I ended up doing one regional, and won the overall there, and then went to North Americans, which would be my third attempt at a pro qualifier. The closest I ever came was I think 8th place, I believe, in Classic Physique. The other ones I got stomped as a light heavyweight, just not big enough, and I didn't want to necessarily push the drugs. I retired from bodybuilding after my last show last September, so a year ago, where I did Ohio State championships. I went as a light heavyweight, took second in both classes, lost to guys that are still competing today who are very, very good, and congratulate them. They're awesome. Will I ever go back? I don't know. Maybe as a masters competitor down the road, but right now business is so big and expanding so quickly. I don't necessarily know if I'll ever have the time to really invest. I still eat like a bodybuilder. I still sleep like a bodybuilder. I still train like one. I still go through growth phases, health phases, get my blood work done. So I still live that exact lifestyle. It hasn't changed for me, nor do I ever see it changing for me. I love bodybuilding. It's not, that doesn't have to include the competition side of things for me, especially with my genetics not being of the top tier like they need to be successful. I would rather enjoy what I'm doing and pass along what I know and what I learned.
Yeah. Excellent, man. Now I want to ask you, obviously there's a huge influence from a very young age in terms of your dad and basically growing up in a gym in terms of bodybuilding, right? But, just because we grow up in a certain environment or, are exposed to something at a young age, that doesn't mean that we're going to go in that direction when we have the choice, right? But so, Mark, what do you feel like has drawn you really into bodybuilding and kind of continues to keep your interest and passion within bodybuilding / fitness, that entire realm? Like what can you put your finger on in terms of it pulling you in and keeping you there?
So one thing about me in any facet is I love having to overcome obstacles and having to adapt and getting smarter, honing your skill set in any way. That could be like interpersonal relationships. It could be, business. It could be bodybuilding specific, anything that challenges me and keeps me interested, at maybe even personal relationships too. But anything that challenges me and puts my back up against the wall and makes me fight, adapt, and overcome I truly will attach myself to. I have this need, and I call it like a monster inside of me that constantly needs to eat and overcome. And that's something that has never changed. I mean, from a young age, it was wrestling, and you're put against one man, right? Or woman in some cases, right? And you have to literally be the best person, strongest person, most skilled person to win. That hasn't changed for me whatsoever. And that goes for bodybuilding. You know, there's no pedigree that will allow you to do the best and be the best bodybuilder. It's all about the work ethic. And I feel like that goes for building businesses too. You know, it's reeled me in. It's the person that's going to be the most resilient, the most adaptable, the hardest working. And this is what keeps me going, not, you know, in the fitness realm, in the bodybuilding realm, and pushing myself in the gym, even though, you know, I'm only in there 4 days a week, but I'm still challenging myself and having to overcome those obstacles.
Yeah. Okay. Now you mentioned growing up, you know, obviously your parents were hard workers and they probably instilled that work ethic in you, but you also said that, there was some credit card debt and there's, you guys weren't rich by any means, right? Um, is it fair to say that money at this stage in your life, or maybe even from a very young age, is something that drives you and motivates you in terms of continuing to push you forward, or is that not fair to say?
So I think money for me has always been something I feared. One, you know, again, yeah, we grew up a little bit on the poor side. We struggled. In 2015, I was homeless. I lived out of my Acura TSX at the time, which, hey, not a bad car, it's just a little bit older. But I lived out of that after a rough relationship, and moved on to live in my friend's parents' basement, who is actually my current training partner. And I see him on a daily basis. Great guy. But for me, money, it was a way to make sure everyone else is taken care of too. The one thing that I've vowed to do in building this business is getting my friends involved, getting people that are good, have good intentions, pure intentions, and are good of heart, involved in the business or businesses that I'm associated with, and making sure that they do well and they can provide for themselves. My way of loving is giving people opportunities. And so money has never been a means to be, you know, filthy rich, or it hasn't been necessarily my drive to see, you know, those commas in the bank account. It's to build things to provide for people. And that's the way that I love. And that's the way my friends are taken care of by me, you know, in my own way, because I worked hard. I want them to be able to work hard. But again, you're going to do it yourself. I'm just there to help, you know, fall back on.
Hmm. You said you had a fear, or there's a fear of money. What do you mean by that?
So, I mean, you know that as there's two spectrum, there's both ends of the spectrum here. One of the spectrum is poverty, you know, going back to being homeless, I'm terrified of. And that's why I work out of fear. I work out of fear, I think, a lot of times, every single day, which is why I show up for work and I'm at my computer. You don't wait for messages from me when you coach with me, nothing like that. I work out of fear in that end, but also I fear the opposite end. And I've seen what money can do to people, and the negative, characteristics or actions that can become of that, and basically take a hold of people.
All right. Okay. Now we're gonna finish just with business and coaching talk here. So I'm really I want you to kind of like, okay, so you're in high school, you're helping a few people out, and it seems like you were kind of like helping people out in terms of training, coaching from a very young age. So it's just something, it sounds like maybe that you're called to do. It's a major purpose in your life, right? But talk about when that moment, if there was a specific moment or maybe a time frame when you kind of were like, all right, this has the potential of being something big. This could provide a financially secure life for me. Talk about that realization or that time period, expound on that a little bit more, and just kind of unpack kind of like the whole coaching business that you oversee right now, Mark, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that this really started transpiring as an idea and uncovering itself as in like 2019 when people started signing on, again, and social media started taking over as a way to advertise yourself and show off your skill set and educate people. It was a different means to education than in person was for me, and I could reach more people. So 2019, I mean, you saw really big teams starting to develop during that time. Justin Mahaley being one of those, and Team Mahaley, right, really started blowing up. I think that was, that was one of their biggest points. And I saw that, and that was the path that was cut in front of me. I was like, well, that's something that I could model after with my own moral compass, my own standards, my own way, my own authenticity. Because prior to that, I don't know of any people that was really providing for themselves without personal training, just as an online coach. It really just didn't exist. But once COVID and the lockdowns hit, this is where it was something that I could double down on, because I was then teaching in my classroom, but from home. We were forced to teach from home. And I had some extra time to be home and to work. And can I make this business really work? And as that year went on, and I got close to my CEO, CFO, and they kind of taught me about the ways of business and their system and how it operates, I started to realize that this could be something much bigger than what I anticipated. And I didn't really have a vision because I didn't know what that really consisted of. I saw bigger teams and how they presented themselves, but you never know until you're in it, really, truly. So I decided at the end of that school year in 2020, about May or June, that I'm going to leave teaching. I'm going to retire from that. And funny enough, in June, when I decide that, my wife gets furloughed. So we end up in this position where it's like, well, what the heck are we going to do if I fail? What are we going to do for money? Am I going to go back, to where I was? Am I going to be homeless again? And so it was just like, okay, I'm going to crank every single day. I wake up, sun up, way past sundown. Sometimes it was sleepless nights where I would just keep cranking and keep, producing content, keep providing value to people, keep coaching people above and beyond what, maybe some people could provide, emotionally. And I would stretch myself very thin because I needed to make it work. But now it's grown into a place where, not only do I have Tomanek trained and my coaching staff that's with me, but I had created another coaching company called Everybody Coaching, which is lifestyle and just general health coaching. I'm now producing another coaching company, which would be focused on the sports psychology end of things. I'm working on that right now, and then working on mentoring other coaches and just how our system basically works and helps people, because it's been proven many times. So, Tomanek Train continues to grow. Like the parent company of Tomanek Train continues to grow. It's been a beautiful ride. I've loved it. It's been really hard at times, but I would have never guessed it would become what it is today. And the culture that has developed here with the people that I work with, between the people that I work with, is fascinating to me. Whereas bodybuilding is an individual sport, here we're starting to see obviously teams develop, but friendships, interpersonal relationships. Sometimes these are lifelong friendships that we're seeing, people connect in cities that they didn't even know each other at the time. And they're meeting up in different places and different locations, going on vacation with each other, becoming training partners with each other. So it's been a really beautiful process.
Okay. So you brought up the word culture, and that's something that I'm fascinated with in terms of what, Matt Jansen and Raw and Revive, they are constantly talking about culture. They want to be, I had one of Matt's coaches underneath him on the other day, the podcast, and he was talking about how they want to become the Alabama, basically, in terms of coaching. And that's their mentality. That's their mindset. That's their goal. That's what Matt is really preaching to the coaches that are underneath him with Camp Jansen. So I see what's going on with Raw and Revive there in Stuart, Florida, and it's fascinating, right? I don't know if we've ever seen anything quite like that within the bodybuilding community, but I feel like we're starting to see more of that permeate throughout the bodybuilding community, and it sounds like that's really what you are moving towards, Mark. But talk to me about culture. Is that something that for you, because I think there's different ways to instill culture. somebody might sit down, they'll have a vision board and they're like, this is how we're going to build the culture. And then other people might allow things to form more organically, right? Just let things unfold as they're supposed to. How have you approached that in terms of building a culture? And just walk us through that a little bit, because I think that's something very important in terms of being an elite coach, but having elite business more importantly, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and you go to the top companies in the world, I'm sure their culture is fantastic and deeply rooted, right? And you look at Matt Jansen, what he's done with Cam Jansen and Raw and Revive, it's beautiful. Like that's such a it supersedes their lives now, and it's generational, which is incredible. Like that's, my culture, essentially you could see it derive all the way back from my dad and what he instilled in me, and now being passed down. And I think culture starts at the top, right? It starts with the leader, it starts with the person that wants to form the culture, but it's not just built by me. So yes, my moral compass, my ethical guidelines, my ethical code, starts, I represent it. I'm authentic to myself. I am who I am. This attracts people. You start building people under you, or bringing people under you, and cultivating relationships with these people. And then you find in those people leadership qualities, people that maybe you couldn't represent or you couldn't care for. Well, these people could. And you start picking out those people that have that maybe their moral compass and ethical guidelines, it aligns with mine, and you put those people in positions of power to help lead people, to help educate people, to help care for people that you might not be able to, or maybe you are able to, but those people have to carry that on. It's ripple effect, right? In time, it's a domino effect. It starts with me. I'm the first domino that falls, and then it goes to everyone else, the other dominoes that I touch. And those people are then impacted, and it continues to carry out, again, throughout time. And it could be days, months, years. You're going to see that continue, that domino effect continue, and the ripple effect continue. And one of my mentors, Big E from Rock and Pro, taught me about ripple effect. He used to mentor me for free, and he'd come out to my gym and he would teach me about biomechanics, engagement, and life. We'd have great conversations. We have great conversations. And I was like, why do you do this for free? I can pay you. He's like, no, it's about ripple effect. Because I impact you, you impact how many other hundreds, if not thousands of people. And I was like, yeah, I see that. He goes, just make sure you do one thing. You pass it down. And I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. But now I get it. At the top of the culture as a leader, now I get it. It makes sense to me. So I think culture is one of those things where people can feel a sense of belonging. They can give to people, they can educate people, they can carry out the vision that I started to build. I built a launch pad for, but I'm not the rocket that takes it to the moon. The people that I have helped and put in positions of power are the ones that fuel the rocket. And then the people that join us on our journey are the ones that really propel us forward.
Do you have like a vision statement or something that you guys kind of rally under in terms of the businesses, or one of the businesses? What does that look like?
So we don't necessarily have a motto. I think when we started with like execute with intent, like make everything intentional that we do. But it has carried over. And now that I'm thinking about it, you asked this question, I think that execute with intent, everything has intent that we do, really shows or showcases itself when, I'm talking with one of my coaches, which have all moved, most of them have moved here to Avon Lake, Ohio, which is surprising. Why Avon Lake? I don't know. But they've moved here and they've joined us. And when we start talking and having conversations about the nice things the athletes say to them and message them and encourage my coaches almost, and say, hey, look how you've helped me. My life has changed. That is executing with intent. That's having intention with your actions, not just money oriented, but more so like these ethical and moral obligations to continue to help people.
Okay. What's your ethical code? You mentioned the word ethical a few times, and then you said ethical code, excuse me. When you're talking about culture, do you have, Mark, like personally, like an ethical code that you have like written out, or at least in your ingrained in your brain, that you live by?
Yeah, so I do. I actually have. I made this a post a long time ago, and I laid out my ethical code. I was like, here's 20 points that I live by. And it could be simple things like treating everyone with respect, because I can learn from a janitor and I can learn from the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Each one of those interactions with people have substantial value. So treat them with respect. Be willing to learn. Be willing to be coachable. Working hard, obviously is at the core and the forefront of my mind at all times. So I wrote out all these things, that I have probably picked up in my lifetime. Treating your spouse with, extreme care, like my dad did with my mom, provide for people when you can, take the time to educate. So they're simple things, but sometimes things that we overlook, in our personal relationships. So it was one post that, again, I made it a long time ago, but it's something that I still look back, and I look back at it, I don't know, maybe it's like 2 months ago. I was like, this still rings true. This is something we still hold on to. And this is still something that I feel like now all of my coaches have in some way, shape, or form shifted it to be their own, in their own voice.
Hmm. Now, I want to get from you, Mark, or glean from you, letting go of what you have started, because this is something I've had a lot of elite, young, up and coming coaches within the bodybuilding community on the podcast, and there's a lot of them that have not gotten to that point, and I don't know if they ever will, for whatever reason, where they can't let go of what they've started, because it's their name. And one of the coaches just said, like, my name's on this, and it's hard for me. And he was being honest and truthful, which I that's why I value these conversations and these podcasts so much, because most people, you can tell that they're really opening up to myself and to everybody that they know is going to listen. And I appreciate that, because that's how we learn, is when people are transparent and vulnerable, right? But he was just honestly, transparently saying, like, I haven't gotten to that point where I've gotten brought on other coaches because my name is attached to this. And he's like, it's just hard for me. And I see that, because I'm myself a very individualistic person. And it's like, I'll just do it all because I know that it's going to get done the way I want to get done. If I let go and let somebody else, I just don't know. There's that fear, right? So talk about you letting go so that you can grow as a leader, but then also your businesses can grow as well.
This is something I really struggled with, and I understand fully, and I still struggle with this from time to time, because again, as we build out businesses and scale them, you know, the question is always, are these people going to care as much as I care? The answer is no, unless we make it, give them a incentive and control to a certain degree about how people perceive them, the type of money they can make, what they can provide for themselves and their family. You have to give them a sense of control, right? But true control, not just because I want you to think you have control. So, when it comes to cultivating that culture, I think it starts there. It starts back there. Who are the people that you want to represent you? What do these people do? What do they align with? How do they speak? Are they authentically themselves? Are they being true to themselves? Have they fully been able to drop the ego enough to give to people? I think you need a piece of ego, to achieve more in life. But have you really mastered it to the point where you can let go of it, so you can then invest in other people without your emotional or egotistical bias, intervening? Now, when I bring people on, I watch them for months. I've actually been watching a couple male coaches for now over a year, to try to find out, do you have what we need to bring to the table to provide for certain people that maybe, again, I can't provide for, or I can, or maybe I just don't have the time. So, it's really about finding those people that you align with, that almost have a talking head of what you preach about, what you live with. But you can't grow if you don't teach people or coach them or mentor them to take your place, right? Tomanek Train will continue on without me. The people that are now in positions of power, like Tom, Leah, and Britt, that, I've mentored and I've worked with and I've invested in, they will carry it on. They have their own rosters. They have their own people to take care of. They have their own families too, that and dreams that they want to aspire to achieve. I put them in positions to be able to seek out those opportunities and be able to do that and work for that. I have never capped their income because I don't believe in doing that. I want them to fulfill everything that they want to in life. And if you do that, now there's personal incentive there. They're going to carry it out. They care. They don't have the ego holding them back. They're willing to invest in other people and care for other people because they have the ability to do so internally, that they've developed. And a lot of the times I find people that are able to do that are the ones that have had to suffer or lose in life significantly in order to build themselves up, and become smarter, become more intentional. So for me, in building these businesses and expanding to other businesses, it's just about getting people that I know care, have a heart, are authentically themselves all the time, and have the desire to achieve more, which you can clearly see who wants more and who does not want more by how they speak on a consistent basis.
What's your ultimate vision in terms of business? Do you have an ultimate vision or ultimate goal for yourself personally, right? The businesses, as you kind of said, they're more than likely, if you build the right culture and bring on the right people, they're going to continue on past, Mark, which is cool to think about. But do you have a personal vision or goal or focus for business long term, Mark?
So I've already hit it, and I've already done it. And now it's like I'm in uncharted territory to the point where I'm like, I don't know what's past there. And things are going so fast and we're growing so fast. And, it's so hard to envision that now. My dream was to be able to build this coaching team with this phenomenal culture, which we have done, put people in positions of power that can take care of people that I cannot and I don't have the skill set to do, but also take care of the people that I can. We've done that. We've succeeded. And another big piece was, hey, I would love to have a physical culture here. Now, Britt moves from California, Leah moves from Seattle to here. Now, Rania, she moved from Houston, Texas. We have other people moving here. And so we have this. I have friends now. I have a family, that are around me on a consistent basis. That is something that I don't think I ever saw coming. But when I saw it developing, I was like, oh, this would be really cool if this happens, but no big deal if I get, and it doesn't happen, it doesn't play out. So right now, there's no current like vision. I just know I want to feed that monster internally, and I know I need to keep achieving. I need to keep overcoming. And so with that inherently comes growth in ways that I'm not expecting. Like, I have friends that have these startup businesses and they want to go full time. I would love to help them. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help them. Finding other coaches that are like myself or were in a position that I was, back in 2019, not knowing how to do taxes. How can we take our system and build it to their culture to help them in a system to help take care of their families? And that's the next step now. I think that's the evolution of what we're going to be trying to achieve and striving for.
Now you've mentioned kind of like your guys' system for getting results in terms of training people, nutrition, and everything that kind of entails your guys' coaching and training business. What kind of is the philosophy or general blueprint, Mark, for your guys' system to get people the health and the fitness results that they desire, they want?
Yeah. So for us, it's all about needs analysis consistently. And we don't have like this concrete system. We have a business system in the background that works really, really well, built by very intelligent individuals. But for us as a coaching team or coaching teams, it's all just needs analysis. So, hey, does this training work for you or not work for you? Let's actually take the time to find out. Does this exercise actually work for you in your biomechanics? Do you have some type of mobility issues? Can we address those, or can we get professionals involved, and collaborate to make this better for you? So I think our whole system, even nutritionally speaking, like people ask, do you do macros or meal plans? I'm like both. I work with type 1 diabetics to IFBB pros. I gotta be ready for it all, or maybe a combination, or maybe intuitive eating on some days because you don't have that discipline to stay all the days on track, or maybe mentally tough days where you need a little bit of flexibility and freedom. We find out exactly, what you need. And we don't have I don't have like a set, oh, it's this way. I have a preferable way, or there's an optimal way to do things. But that doesn't always mean it's the best for that person. So it's finding out what's optimal for that person. How can we help assist? What do you need in terms of education? What tools can I provide?
Excellent, man. Okay, now we're gonna kind of start heading towards the finish line. The word that keeps popping up in my mind, because I mean you've kind of mentioned the word mentor or mentorship a few times as you're just unpacking your life experiences and story, but that's kind of like what keeps popping up in my mind as you are educating us today and sharing your story with us, is just like you're a mentor, right? You have this passion, desire to teach people, educate people, pour into other people's lives, elevate others. What is it specifically about that being a mentor, whether you consider yourself that or not? That's what you are. That's who you are. That's what you're doing right now with your life. What is it about all of that that encompasses being a mentor? What is it that really excites you, gets you passionate, that really what do you enjoy about that? Being able to elevate others.
Yeah, it's getting the message, on my WhatsApp, saying that since we've done this, I have now changed this, this, and this about my life. Or since my wife has been working with you, or my husband has been working with you, I've seen these changes, and lays them all out. I've seen a better person develop. Like, bodybuilding, we all start for a reason, right? A lot of us, we have some insecurity, we have something happen to us in our past that we want to, excel in, so that we can prove to ourselves that's not crippling us anymore. That's not holding us back. That right there, and getting those testimonials from people and seeing the changes, that again, that ripple effect for them, and how they now pass on. A lot of my old athletes have become coaches, and they're great functional health coaches. I work with a lot of great coaches still, coaches that you've had on here, and ultimately, what I find is they're able to help so many different people in so many different ways. That is what makes me want to teach. And I thought, or a mentor, and I thought I would get that out of teaching high school students. And I did, to a certain degree. I still see a lot of them on a daily basis. They come into my gym, they're working, they reach out in my DMs, they're like, hey, Mr. Tomanek, I've been doing this, and I'm in the Marines now, I'm in the Navy, I'm in the SEALs, I made it, after all the stuff that you told me, or the discussions we've had. Like, seeing that cultivate is probably the most exciting thing for me, and the most fulfilling. You could take away all the dollars, I'll find another way to get dollars, but that is something that I probably couldn't live without now at this point.
So I'm gonna kind of finish with some off topic or fun, some different questions. In terms of the bodybuilding community specifically, what's something that you kind of see as you kind of look out at the landscape of the bodybuilding community currently, Mark? What's something that you don't like or you would like to see change? And that can be whatever in terms of bodybuilding. That could be the coaching space, that could be the competing space, that can be training, that could be how bodybuilders are utilizing social media. What don't you like, or what would you like to see change?
Yeah, I think originally when I started coaching, I wanted to see people become more educated, and so I sought out fantastic mentors to become educated. But now everyone has the same access to information. Everyone's teaching the same thing, talking about the same thing. But I think the one thing that they're missing out on in being successful coaches and making successful connections with people and truly impacting people on such a larger scale is the lack of authenticity. People all sound the same, and they're teaching the same thing. They're regurgitating the same thing. And I know a lot of other coaches talk about this, but the Godfather's information is really Austin Stout in many cases. He's brilliant, but they won't tell people that. They'll claim it's their information, instead of saying, oh, I learned this from so-and-so, because they feel like it takes away their credibility, but it doesn't, because they're truly still putting this stuff out there. They're doing these things in real life. So I think the biggest thing for me is just people, I wish people would be more authentically them. speak as themselves more, and own not only their strengths but their weaknesses, because if they do that, they will see how they can improve substantially, where they can get better, and then they will excel significantly. So we're not making all the same reels talking about the same things and doing things the same exact way. We truly see differentiation and authenticity. That would probably be the biggest thing that I would see to love to see change.
Hmm. What is your biggest gym pet peeve, Mark?
Oh man, I've in my gym being so small and so family oriented, I've seen the same people in my gym over and over again. And you get to know them, their family. I hang out with some of them on Christmas. I see some of them, daily at some point. I think my biggest pet peeve, it's not like the videos, and people taking videos like some people hate, or making TikToks or whatever. That's not, I think my biggest thing is playing calm music in an environment that requires an aggressive, um, expressive, I want to say like aggressive nature, aggressive, attitude. The calm music some people put on my gym with the Bluetooth system, I'm like, guys, come on, man. Like, help me out. Help me out here. This is not what we want. This is not the culture we want to cultivate.
Okay, last question, Mark, and then I'll give you the platform to kind of close things out for us. Somebody's watching this, somebody listened to your story, our conversation today. They learned a lot. And again, because of social media, there's a lot of glamorization in terms of everything, especially I see the coaching kind of online businesses, right? It's very glamorized. Bodybuilding is very glamorized, or at least physique competing is glamorized through social media. And I think there's just a lot of misrepresentation of a lot of things because of social media. And specifically, I'm talking about bodybuilding, coaching, all the things. But there are talented young people out there that are going to get into bodybuilding and be successful, get into coaching, they're going to be successful. And I want to try to help those people out, just as you want to try to help people out in your world. So if somebody's listening to this, they want to get into coaching, they want to mentor, they want to teach, they want to educate, they specifically want to get into fitness and health and bodybuilding coaching, where are a couple places that they can start that are going to kind of start them off on the right foot?
I think the biggest piece that helped propel me forward in terms of coaching in the time period where I started was Austin Scout's mentorship. Hands down. I mean, it was, I got an email in my inbox the other day. Someone asked me, how was it? I'm trying to, I think I should just learn this stuff on my own. I think that, what's different from what else is out there on podcasts. I'm like, this stuff that he teaches is not out there on podcasts. He has so much applicable information, knowledge, situations, and helps you become not a coach, a thinker, someone that is constantly digging into information and cultivating, and developing and devising a plan for this specific person instead of this protocol you could use with my supplement code and all that. You know what I mean? It's truly the biggest piece that's going to help propel forward, I think coaches in the industry, but also bodybuilders, because if you go through this, you'll learn about functional health, you'll learn about blood work, you'll be able to look at your own stuff, save yourself a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of health, issues that could transpire. So I think that was the biggest piece for me, was Austin South's mentorship. And there's other great mentors out there, of course. I just think he has the ability to not only connect with people that are starting out as a coach, but also people like me or even beyond.
All right. Excellent. Yeah. I've had Austin on. I had, Felix Norman on, who won the overall at North Americans, and Austin clearly helped him, greatly, which Felix said. So, and honestly, a lot of you young, up and coming, successful, elite coaches, like a lot of you bring up Austin's name. And like you said, he's kind of the godfather with the functional side of things. And his name keeps coming up because, it's legit, right?
Yeah, exactly. He is the grandfather of it all. I say that and I'll die on that hill.
Yeah. And it's cool. I mean, he lives in Ohio too, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's actually in Ashley. He's about an hour and a half from me. I've trained in his gym a couple times. There's a couple other things that he does in his house. I try to make it down there, but things have been busy lately.
Yeah.
So or he comes up to my gym sometimes and trains too.
Cool. Awesome.
Mhm.
All right. So Mark, first of all, I just want to say thanks for coming on today, man. Chopping up with all of us, sharing your experiences, your story. Before I do a quick outro, I just kind of want to turn it back over to you. Any final thoughts, any final words, any shout outs, where people can connect with you, your other coaches, all the things that you got going on. Please share all of that with us, and then I'll close us out.
Sure. So I just want to say first off, thank you. And thank you for doing this podcast. The questions you asked are well thought out. They truly dig into the person that you're interviewing. They're not just unoriginal questions. So it's greatly appreciated that you do this. So thank you. People can find us one on Instagram, Tomanek Train at Tomanek Train, and also Everybody Coaching. We're both there, tomanektrain.com as well to explore all of our coaches. Shout out to Coach Leah, Britt, Tom, Haley, Liz, and the gang there, and the teams that we're creating in the background now. Shout out to my CEO, CFO, Stephen and Tony. They're phenomenal people. I'm blessed because I get to work with phenomenal people on a daily basis. They're becoming my best friends. They truly are the people that I enjoy talking to on a daily basis. People I enjoy learning from too, and learning how to be a better person and a better leader as well. You can find me on Instagram at the Megatron _. You can find me there. DM me, ask me any questions. I'd love to help. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mark. And thank you again, my man. All of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. I appreciate all of you. I value all of you. A couple quick things as we wrap up this great conversation today with Mark. If you have not done so already, please make sure you head over to YouTube. If you're on YouTube right now, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. That's greatly appreciated. Also, take this episode with Mark, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Mark, tag Behind the Muscle so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.